All right, joining me now is Dan Greenburg, who is covering the Celtics for Barstool. Thank you so much, Dan, for hopping on with me. I'm excited to hear about all your Celtics coverage for this year.
I know. Thanks for having me. And again, I know we set it off camera, but I feel like I should start by officially congratulating you and all of Nuggets Nation on your title. That was quite a run. I don't know if I would have, I don't know if it would have ended the same had the Celtics not choked, but we'll never know.
We'll blow right past that, but hey, I mean, who knows? Maybe we could rehash that this year. It'll be a fun thing for sure. But I mean, who could not be excited about this upcoming season and what the Celtics just did over the course of this offseason? They remade what I think had become maybe not quite a stale team, but there are some elements to it that you change a little bit around. And even though the Celtics have had such amazing success over the course of these last 5 years, just in general, now you might have the highest expectations that you've had maybe since the Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward additions.
It's interesting. I think after their finals run, so last season and then this season is what I would deem as truly like title or bust type expectations, right? Before then it was we're knocking on the door, but can they get over the hump and actually make the finals? Well, now that they sort of choked away a title and then choked away an opportunity to get back, with the moves that they've made, it's like there is no excuse. Like even if you wanted to say their depth is maybe a little bit lower, their top end talent, their top 6, 7, 8 guys is more than enough to win a title. And you would hope that the internal development of your two franchise pillars, like this is it from now until I don't know, maybe 3 years, 4 years, whenever they have to make tough roster decisions based on the second apron, like we are fully enthralled in championship or fail type expectations. And I think I think that's a good thing.
It's insane, and but it is great for the league for this to be where the Celtics are at right now, and you see the moves that the Milwaukee Bucks made for Damian Lillard and that Phoenix made for Bradley Beal, though the lower scale, obviously. And you start to think, okay, are the Celtics, are they going to miss out on an opportunity here to get better? No, they go get Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday and go all in, completely all in for what is expected to be an epic regular season and hopefully playoff run too. Tell me, do you think that this is the best starting five in the NBA? Because I just did some rankings over at Mile High Sports. I think that this is the best starting group in the NBA.
I think now let me ask you, who did you have? Did you have them going double big, or did you have Jrue and White starting with only like Porzingis? What was your?
I had Jrue and White. I thought that was the right call for most teams. Now, if they faced a team like Denver, you probably go double big.
Yeah, I think regardless whether it's whatever combination, I think they have enough talent to own that label. I think. With Porzingis, and we saw it last night just in his 17 minutes, like what he gives them from that big man spot is unlike anything they've ever had during the Tatum era. And they really haven't had this type of like mid-range shooting big probably since Garnett. So the way that they'll be able to play and how they can mix and match with, whether it's White coming off the bench or you're starting Horford and it's Jrue, they have a lot of lineup versatility, which I think makes them unique. And on paper, sure, but as we know, it doesn't matter what it looks on paper. We need to see how it looks on the court. And I think, as they get more familiar with each other, it should only get better. But it wouldn't surprise me if it takes a couple games to just figure out that chemistry, just because the guys that they traded were on this roster for, nearly a decade. And if, in Rob's case, almost half of a decade. So they have to get the reps in together. But from a talent standpoint, I mean, they're loaded at all 5 positions.
It's hard to match the kind of talent that they're going to be putting out there. I'm curious what you think the offensive pecking order is going to look like. Obviously, Tatum will be the first option, but is Jaylen Brown going to be the second option and Jrue Holiday the third? How does Kristaps fit into that? Like, what do you think they're ultimately going to bear out with?
I mean, everything starts and stops with Tatum. He gets to do whatever the hell he wants for while he's on the. That's take whatever shot your usage, whatever. I think when it comes to second in line, I think really second, third, and fourth is going to be rotating, right? Like
Mm,
it's going to be matchup dependent. I think we saw last night with Jaylen, he was second on the team with 19 points, but it didn't really feel like there was too much of a pecking order difference between he and Porzingis. So I think, if Jaylen was taking 22 shots or 21 shots a game last year, maybe that number is more 19 a game, right? But I think what is going to be more important is the inclusion of Porzingis for when we're in tight, close games and things are bogging down. For me, I would say, okay, Porzingis as an offensive option is going to be higher on the pecking order. If it's, the normal flow of a game, I think you're still going to see the two wings be the 1-2 punch. And then the addition of Porzingis as that versatile third option is going to be what separates them compared to last year. That was Marcus Smart. So when it comes to
right.
Holiday, if he's your fourth option, I feel great about that. But there are going to be things that he is now responsible for that aren't going to be shot related, that are going to be just as important, right? Like how
Yeah.
he's getting guys organized late in games, how he's feeding Porzingis or maybe even Jayson Tatum in the post to, if we've had a 3-4 minute drought where nobody can buy a jump shot. All right, Jrue, you may not be shooting the ball, but your play as your point guard is now just as important. So I think it'll be a lot like the '08 team where they always asked in a close game, the score is, one possession, who takes the final shot? They all answered the open guy. I think, if you can truly adapt that mentality, then I don't really care about the pecking order. I just want them to play the right way and not get into this like heliocentric, Luka ball dominant, ISO basketball. Like those are the things that always got them into trouble. They now have the offensive firepower. They shouldn't have to play that way.
It definitely felt like it kind of got into that ISO heavy offense, especially in the playoffs, where
Yep.
you put a ton of pressure on Tatum, a ton of pressure on Brown, and sometimes it doesn't bear out that way. So it's always nice to be able to just create consistently good shots, which the Celtics, when the offense was rolling last year, they certainly did. But there were definitely times where it bogged down, as you mentioned.
Yep.
I love the idea of them staggering their starters, staggering their guys, which they'll do plenty of. They did plenty of last year too, but like the different combinations that you can throw out there: Tatum and Holiday, Brown and Porzingis, Brown and Tatum, Brown and Holiday. Like you could do a lot of different things to make sure that all of the minutes are pretty strong, even if the rest of the depth isn't as awesome. Who are some guys that you're looking at? Horford, I have coming off the bench as the sixth man, but who knows? He may start some games here or there too.
Yeah.
Outside of those top six, who are the guys that you're looking at as this player needs to step up?
So there's a couple, right? Because, they sent a lot of proven, consistent, legitimate NBA shooting out the door, right? You're
Yeah,
not getting Brogdon. He was 44% from deep. Grant Williams over the last 2 or 3 years was 39, 40%. So to make up for that, guys like Sam Hauser is going to have to prove that he's ready, right? He's going to
mm-hmm.
have to go up a level. I think last year we saw defensively, he showed that he wasn't a stiff on that end, right? He at least
Right.
provided some resistance, which is all you can ask from a guy with his athletic build, but he's got to be 40%. Peyton Pritchard, the quotes are saying he's out for blood. He just signed for 30 million. He had 26 last night. He's now going from, DNP coach's decision to probably around 15, 20 minutes a game. So he has to not only show he can shoot, but let me see what he looks like as a bench creator. Can he get into the teeth of the defense and be more than just a spot up shooter? That's going to be big. And they need one of the wings to hit. So whether that's O'Shea Brissett, Lamar Stevens, or rookie Jordan Walsh. And I'm thinking
Mm,
it's more likely that it's going to be Brissett, just because I think he's maybe a little bit of a more proven outside shooter. But, him and LeVar Stevens are going to have to, crash the glass, be these defensive wings, maybe guard a size up because now you don't have that anymore in Grant and his build and his toughness. So, if one of those guys hit, it's going to make a huge difference. But none of those guys you would rely on in like a playoff series. But we have a lot of basketball before we get to the spring. So, the hope is that while they're not name guys that you may look at their roster and say, geez, this isn't looking too hot. They are guys that have shown flashes where if they have an increased role, just be serviceable. You have to replace the outside shooting. You have to replace, the defense of your front court. And those, we're going to see come the trade deadline. Brad does have tools to address if that's a need, but heading into the season, I would hope that at least one or two of those guys shows out.
I think that's completely fair. And the Pritchard extension was a interesting timing, I think, in terms of, hey, you get something done, you make sure you're getting him under contract.
Yep.
And you've got guys like Jrue Holiday and Derek White that can slide to the two pretty easily, the defensive aces that they are. I think in the starting group, this is it's one of the best perimeter defensive trios in the NBA between Holiday, White, and Tatum.
Yep.
Brown, we'll see what his defense ultimately looks like. But there's just not a lot of questions at the top with this team. And if you get one or two of those guys off the bench to really figure things out.
I should say outside of health. Health is obviously the gigantic question, but from a talent and a skill set standpoint, you're right. They're rock solid, but none of that matters if you can't stay on the floor, unfortunately.
Well, let's predict it then. How many games do you think this team's going to win during the regular season if you had to pick a number?
I think their over-under is 44 or 54 and a half, something like that.
That sounds right.
I would think they should be right around in the 55, 57 range they were last year. I think, obviously that's assuming, there's going to be some injuries along the line. Like last year, Smart missed a month. Robert Williams missed 29 games. They still won 57. So I would feel comfortable saying, over. I don't think we're looking at a 60, 62, 63 win team just because I think they'll be smart in their, load management. I think, they're still the Boston Celtics. They're still going to make you want to gouge your eyes out and lose games they shouldn't lose and all that stuff. That doesn't go away. But, if you get moderate health and you got Porzingis for around 60 games, Horford for around 60 games, you should be flirting with that, mid 50, 57 wins, I think.
I've already penciled in 2 losses to the Orlando Magic. I think that's
they're having another one of those home last year. They played them twice, back to back at the Garden, and it's the Magic are the only team that they have this weird home and home, but you're playing both games in your own building sort of schedule weirdness, and for whatever reason, the Magic own that ass. I'm just gonna say, until we are proven otherwise. I'm just going to say the Magic own that ass because they never beat them. It's insane.
They give the Nuggets a ton of issues too. And I wonder if that's more of just hey, we're traveling to Orlando from Denver kind of thing. Yeah. But it is always funny that Denver loses that game every time.
I think part of it is because they've been in this rebuild that, people probably look at them as an easy win, sort of like what people did with OKC last year. And next thing you know, SGA's, giving you the business.
Yeah.
I think you could see teams like the Magic be that surprise Thunder team where they're playing for the play-in. They have great length and great talent, but the Celtics do have an overlooking competition problem. So I'm hoping that doesn't, show itself this season.
We'll see what happens. I've got this team for 56 wins as well. I think that's around the right number. They're going to rest a little bit, as you mentioned, but the talent's going to carry the day in a lot of these cases. And curious, final question here. Milwaukee Bucks, they load up on their own side of things. How do you see those two teams matching up in the playoffs? And do you think the Celtics can get past them and get to the finals?
So what's so fascinating about both of these trades and both of these rosters is they didn't really solve the other's biggest, what gives the current team problems, right?
Right.
The Bucks did not address their wing depth, and we have seen nothing that shows they have the defensive talent to handle Boston on the perimeter, right?
Right.
At the same time, the Celtics unloaded a lot of their physical pick and roll big man defense for Giannis. So you could say bringing in Jrue Holiday addressed the Dame issue, but now you have two less bodies to throw at Giannis in the pick and roll. And we don't know, like, Al Horford can handle it one-on-one, but only for so long. And mostly, you know, he needs that weak side help. So it's going to be fascinating to where neither side really addressed the weakness that made guarding the other team tougher, but
Yeah.
both teams added such a ridiculous level of talent that you could say that's not even going to matter, right? Like a big portion of the Bucks' issues late was offense. Well, now you have arguably one of the most ridiculous offensive point guards in the league. The
Yeah.
Celtics, it was predictability. They didn't, you know, really have a way to, you know, execute late in games outside of just isoing with Tatum. Well, now you're adding that weapon in Porzingis, and you're replacing what you lost in Smart with Jrue Holiday. But, you know, it's interesting because in all of their matchups last year, the Celtics, I mean, they were mostly all blowouts. They were putting up 130 plus. And in the game they lost, it was that overtime game where the second unit nearly beat all the Bucks starters on the road. So I still feel like you match up well, but at the same time, like, I need to see how the Dame Giannis duo looks. But on paper, I still don't see, like, if Jay Crowder is still having to guard Jayson Tatum, I feel great. If Pat Connaughton still has to guard Jaylen Brown, I feel great. So, you know, those are issues that I don't foresee changing, but it may not matter because if you're going to trap Dame on the pick and roll and he can just lob it to Giannis, like, who's going to be there to prevent him from getting to the rim? Because it's not Porzingis. It's not, you know, Luke Cornett. Like, he's just too strong for them. And even though Robert Williams never locked him down, he was still an athletic freak that could challenge him at the rim because he has ridiculous, like, air time. So I'm still going to say Celtics in 5, Celtics in 6 if they were ever to meet in a playoff series. But I do think it's going to be a battle, you know, not knowing how either side looks. Just from how once you get past Dame and Giannis, I don't know if they have the deep, like, what are they going to do when you put Brook Lopez from the rim because he has to guard 25 feet and you have Giannis guarding 25 feet? What are they going to do if they don't have that perimeter defense to prevent a Tatum, a Brown, you know, a Jrue from getting to the rim?
I don't know if you heard, but Malik Beasley, I think, is going to be their stopper on the wing this year. So
like, exactly. Like, you know, that doesn't strike fear in me, knowing that, and I think it will help that now that it's no longer Grayson Allen that has to drop those assignments, but it's not like you're replacing him with, you know, an ample defensive wing. They don't have it, or they're going to be relying on Beauchamp, however you say his name, to make that impact right away. And he has virtually zero NBA experience. It's a tough task to ask a guy who's never done it before to suddenly limit 2 all NBA level wins.
On the other end, my guess is that the Celtics will probably have Jrue guard Lillard and Tatum guard Giannis and then switch that pick and roll. That would be my guess. And just try to get as physical of bodies on both of those guys, athletic of bodies as they can. And just see where the chips fall. And if the Bucks are going to ISO their way to death against a Celtics team that's going to outscore them, then that's probably fine. But I have not made my pick officially on which of those teams comes out. I mean, it is going to be a war. Like, you can't count out Giannis.
It wouldn't shock me if they went with the approach that they had in their 2021 series or 2022 series, where it's like, all right, Giannis, you're going to get 40. It's like the old LeBron theory where it's like, all right, you get 40. We're going to lock down everybody else, because they are more suited to lock down the perimeter and Dame than you are to stop both Dame and Giannis. Because again, now the Celtics have to deal with Jrue's shaky postseason shooting. That used to be a benefit going up against the Bucks, where it's like, all right, if Middleton is hobbled and Jrue is shooting tour dates, then you really only have to worry about Giannis offensively. Now, I mean, I know Dame's postseason, you know, shooting is not, you know, it doesn't blow you away, but it's still Damian Lillard. Like, he's still a ridiculous offensive talent. So it may just be a situation where they sell out to stop that. And then, you know, if Giannis gets 50, then Giannis gets 50.
Well, we will see what happens, Dan. He is Dan Greenburg at Stool Greeny. Make sure to follow his coverage of the Celtics at Barstool. Dan, thank you so much for hopping on with me. Really appreciate you hopping in, and good luck this season, man. It's gonna be fun.
Awesome. You too, man, Ryan. Go Nuggets, right?
Go Nuggets, baby.
Go Nuggets.